G'day folks, welcome to this map overview for Barbarossa Army Group Centre 1941 from GMT's East Front series. Before setting up the counters, it's always a good idea to inspect the map and have a sense of the terrain that this sort of Army Group Centre campaign will be fought over. You can see Brest down here in the far southwest. We've got Minsk pretty much right smack bang in the centre, and Smolensk, follow the highway along, out here, leading on the highway to Moscow, out to the east, off map. So yeah, I'll take you for a sort of zoomed in look in just a moment, but basically the frontier runs off on the very far. You can see here the border between Poland and East Poland runs along here, runs up north. And as I step around it, I won't, but it runs along here, zigzags a little bit along to the northwest. So this is 4 22 by 34 inch maps. And just off to the north is map WA, which is just sort of 3 A4 sized. It's a single map sheet, which I'll show you in a moment, 3 A4 sizes. It just kind of attaches to the top of the map. And I just am just out of room on my table, so it just doesn't fit. So I'll be sort of attaching that to the top of the map when I need it. In terms of key terrain features, you can see these rivers, the Pripyat marshes down the south here. A lot of open terrain in that sort of central corridor through Minsk and Smolensk, and a lot of open ground in the north up there. You may note there's a bit of an overlap in terms of the territory covered between Army Group Centre and Army Group North. This northern sort of corridor. Yeah, so some of those features up there will be familiar if you've played Army Group North. This is, of course, the second edition, recently published. When I set up the game, I'll show you sort of in a later video. I'll show you the counter quality as well, because GMT has really stepped up their production quality in later years, and the counters are much thicker than they've been in all their previous publications. All right, let's zoom in and I'll show you some of the details on this map. Okay, so starting out here in the west again, on the border, you can see these sort of dotted areas here. They're the Soviet fortified lines, which provide a +1 dice roll modifier when the Germans attack across those lines. I haven't really taken a close study of the rail networks yet, but that's something I will need to do. With these front series, your offensives really need to follow, if not on these rail lines, then very close to them. The rail networks are the primary means for advancing your supply units, and you need those supply units to supply your combats and pretty much avoid the punitive modifiers that result. So yeah, basically a good offensive needs to be close to those rail networks. I've got Grodno in the centre here. It looks like the key rail hub. Rail coming through here into there, and it splits to a southern fork and then a northern fork. The northern fork runs all the way up to Vilnius. The southern fork splits again, one head coming down south and one heading through the centre there. So Grodno is certainly an early objective, securing those rail networks. Part of the rail also comes through here. It links up with that Grodno link and goes through Vilnius. There is also, yeah, here it is. Here's the northern rail line coming to Vilnius. So Vilnius, Grodno, important early objectives for the Germans. Sorry, there's Vilnius up here. All roads lead to Minsk in this case. So you can see the rail lines coming back down into Minsk. Some wooded terrain, and these rivers are going to impede an attempt to come around to Minsk from the south. But you can see here these primary roads along the north from Vilnius, so capturing Vilnius and then driving from the north looks to be advantageous. This southern terrain down here near the Pripyat marshes looks horrific. So just on the southern side of this image here, a combination of Russian fortified lines with wooded terrain with marshes. Marshes are absolutely horrific in the East Front series. Basically, mechanized units can't move through them unless they're following a road, and even then there's a lot of rules around marshes. They're just basically horrible. These are swamps, which are even worse. Basically, you don't want to be down here if possible. So from Minsk, you'll notice this red line. This is where that the Russian highway to Moscow begins, and it's principally reserved for the Germans. It's principally reserved for their motorized, mechanized units, and it's pretty much follows the path straight through to Smolensk. We've got, of course, you can just start to see on the screen now, the Dnieper River, which hooks around, of course, south of Smolensk, points the way towards Moscow, and then cuts down sharply south towards the Pripyat marshes. Gomel is just off camera to the southeast. There it is featuring now. A longer term objective for the Germans. But you can probably get the sense, just through these images, that the northern side of Army Group Centre, well, when I say northern, centre northern, this is where they want to direct their forces. With the East Front series, again, your offensives, you've got the rail lines. Second consideration, of course, is your panzer and mechanised motorised divisions. They facilitate the what's it called, Panzer Division Integrity Bonus and the Combined Arms Bonus. Plus, they're the biggest, hardest hitting formations you have as the Germans. Plus, they've got, relatively speaking, good stacking limits for the various formations in those divisions. So basically, where the Germans send their Panzer divisions is where they want to push and hit. And that'll be straight through the centre here, I anticipate. Interesting terrain features through here, the Beresina River. This could be difficult going through here between Minsk and Smolensk. Some more Russian fortified lines up in the north, up here. But then once they get past Minsk, if they stay north of that, if they can cross the Dnieper, great. But if they stay north of it, there's decent amounts of open, clear terrain, which is going to be very difficult for the Russians to defend in. Now, of course, this is just Army Group Centre. If you want, you can link up with Army Group North, Army Group South in the south. It links up with, I believe, Typhoon out in the east. So yeah, you can have some larger campaigns and scenarios if you want. As it stands, the scenarios that come with this are pretty big. The full campaign is huge. It's well worth, if you're playing this, before you set any counters up, spending some time looking over those rail networks, thinking about what you're going to do. Once the units go on the map, you can still read the rail lines, but it's good to have an idea of what you want to do. The other thing you need to do is study the victory point schedule, have a sense of the how victory points change for capturing certain things at certain times. What do I mean by that? Well, Minsk in the centre here. This is the victory point schedule. Now, you'll notice that if you can capture Minsk by game turn 5, it's worth 6 victory points. If you capture it after game turn 5, so 6 plus, it's only worth 2 points. So having an idea of this can drive your early actions as the Germans and as the Russians. The Russians want to defend these locations. The Germans want to drive at them. Vilnius, I mentioned, very important, not far from the border. By game turn 2, 4 victory points. So early, this should suggest to you, this is kind of a guide to what you need to do. If you don't know much about the history, and I'll talk more about that in the next video, once I've set all the counters up. If you don't know much, adhere to the victory point changes. So Vilnius by turn 2. Grodno by turn 2. Minsk by turn 5. These are kind of what you should be striving for. And once your units are set up, plan how to achieve the capture of those objectives by that turn. Not quite. I'll call it a turn limit, a turn cap in a sense. Once you reach that cap, the VPs drop off considerably. So yeah, as I said, 4 maps. Let me bring over. This is just map WA. As I said, 3 A4 size sheets, which just doesn't fit. If I can just try and zoom up a little bit, you can see how much it misses by. So probably half the map won't fit. And rather than, I think when I played Army Group North, I printed off parts of this map. It's not far, it's only a tiny little section here. This is the Army Group boundary. And they're probably only using this bottom 6 hexes. I'll consider printing off just a small, maybe 5-inch corridor of that map and placing it up the top there. But yeah, that's all that doesn't fit. Really, the Germans just need this to capture Ljev across the Volga River. And it's way off, it's late in the game as well. It's up in the northeast corner. What else is there of note to point out? You'll notice the rivers as well. The rivers tend to be in the south, coming off the marshes, but there isn't much in the centre. Again, you can pretty much draw a corridor from Grodno all the way through. You can draw a corridor from Grodno through to Smolensk without crossing a river. That's not to say the Germans don't want to capture key river crossings. There are a few that they want to kind of advance and secure along the way just to help along this sort of southern corridor, but they can certainly get the job done without needing to cross the rivers. All right, folks, so I'm going to stop the counters, and in a separate video I'll talk about unit dispositions and sort of broader history and German objectives and how they're going to, having studied this terrain, get the job done. All right, that'll be coming soon. Thanks, folks.